Finally, an AbhiPragya one-shot fanfiction by Mina. Abhi flopped onto his back, gasping for breath. He swiped his hand against his sweaty face, twining his fingers into his hair as he tried to recover. Beside him, Pragya was already starting to cool down. She closed her eyes and reveled in the ebbing tide of her own bliss. For a few moments she was completely lost in her overwhelming sense of satisfaction and fulfillment. Finally, after a year and a half of marriage, misunderstandings, and mayhem, she and Abhi had had a proper wedding night, their first time together. And finally, after 31 years on the planet, 16 years of wondering and waiting and wishing, and 17 months of secret frustration and escalating attraction to her ridiculously gorgeous husband, finally, she had done it. And it was really, really good. A part of her was now actually a little glad that Abhi had had so many girlfriends in the past. He had gained experience and skill, and now she got to benefit from it. Because now he was all hers. Hers to enjoy, hers to treasure, and hers to explore with. Of course, Pragya had fallen in love with Abhi and wanted to be with him for reasons completely unrelated to his amazing body and special bedroom talents. She loved his soft heart and his silly attitudes. She loved his fierce commitment to family and his genuine approach to his work. Secretly, she even loved his obnoxious temper tantrums and his dangerous willingness to take the world at face value. Somehow, over their year and a half together, she had learned to love almost every little thing about him, and she would want to be by his side as his best friend and strongest ally, even if she wasn't his wife. But she was his wife, and he was her husband, which meant that finally, she could try all those things forbidden for proper, good girls to think about. All those simple things other girls had tried at much younger ages, like kissing and cuddling and naughty notes from boyfriends, and all those other things that no one was allowed to talk about, those experiences grown women had with lovers and husbands. Pragya had always had a healthy curiosity about what went on between men and women, but for most of her life that curiosity had no outlet. In her family, such things were not talked about. Even on the day before her wedding, her mother and dadi and aunts had only hinted about a husband's expectations, without really discussing any questions or fears she might have had. And though she and Bulbul were very close as sisters, the fact of Pragya being the elder meant that she never really talked about her interest in or ideas about men, except in general romantic terms. Pragya had had a handful of close girlfriends growing up who all got married before her, and a few of the more adventurous ones had even had serious relationships before getting married. But even they weren't exactly willing to talk about details of their intimate lives to a girl who hadn't even had a real hope of getting married until the stars aligned to bring Abhi into her life. So Pragya was left to feed her curiosity and her fantasies with a secret supply of imported Mills and Boon romance novels and her very own creative imagination. Oh, she knew not to take the romance novels too seriously. They obviously exaggerated and euphemized most of the physical details, and everything always fit the same old formula of heated looks, sudden kiss, forbidden touches, passionate consummation, misunderstandings and consequences, improbable happy ending. She never seriously expected to experience the things she read about, but still, the books gave her lots of ideas about what might be possible. And now that she had a willing and ready partner in Abhi, she would finally get to act on those ideas, some of which had been driving her mad with curiosity for literally half her life. Abhi finally recovered his breath enough to talk normally. He reached for her hand and brought it to his lips to kiss her knuckles. "You okay?" he asked, smiling fondly at her. Pragya smiled back, I'm splendid, she said. She traced a finger along his cheek, enjoying the novelty of being so close and yet so relaxed with him. He caught her hand and kissed it again, then pulled her close into his arms. So, I'm wondering something, he said a bit hesitantly. Pragya angled her head to look up at him. He'd pulled her close enough that her face could rest against his neck, and she couldn't help but laugh at the mixed expression of confusion and curiosity on his face. What is it? Don't take this the wrong way, but are you sure that was your first time? Excuse me? Pragya tried to pull away, feeling indignant that he even had to ask, but Abhi only let her slide an arm's length away from him, keeping hold of her with a possessive hand on her waist. No, I mean, you weren't shy at all, Abhi tried to explain. Pragya frowned. It hadn't even occurred to her that she should be shy. She'd been thinking of this night for so long, she'd forgotten to worry about it being her first time. Yes, she'd been a bit nervous, but out of excitement, not fear or self-consciousness. And those nerves had dissolved as instinct took over. She had just gone with the moment and done what felt good, but now it seemed that Abhi somehow disapproved. So, you don't like it? You want me to... I love it, Abhi affirmed quickly. He tipped up her chin so he could meet her eyes. It's just, I wasn't expecting it, he explained. Pragya felt a welcome surge of relief at his words. He didn't disapprove. He was surprised, but maybe pleasantly so. She laughed softly and answered him, Right, well, get used to it. Abhi raised his eyebrow, confusion once again dominating his face. What do you mean? Pragya trailed her hand against his chest, smiling to herself as she watched her fingers dance along his skin. I mean that we have a lot of time to make up for. You've put off this marital duty for 1.5 years, you know. You owe me. Whoa, I put this off? As if you would have been okay with this from day one. Come on, Chashmish, you couldn't even stand to see me with my shirt off, let alone touch me. Abhi sounded smug, as if he was proving some kind of point by reminding her of their early days. Obviously, he had gotten the idea from her behavior back then that she was a prudish innocent. She had to make clear to him that that was a mistaken assumption. Pragya smirked up at him. Well, maybe I would have been okay with it if I had known it would be this good. You know, I'd heard that men with big egos are usually bad in bed. And no one has a bigger ego than you. Seeing his eyes widening in outrage, she looked back down at his chest and continued, So, I already wasn't interested because you were torturing me and because you're so ridiculous most of the time, and on top of that I just assumed you'd be bad at it. What? Abhi squawked, struggling for words as he took in her taunt. He tightened his hold on her waist, which had the happy side effect of sending a pulse of pleasure along her spine. It felt good to be held close, and even more so when she was successfully teasing him. Abhi usually had the upper hand when it came to teasing and good-natured taunts, but Pragya thought maybe she had discovered one place where she could always have the last word. As it was, Pragya was starting to feel sleepy. She yawned hugely, then affectionately patted Abhi's arm. Okay, Rockstar, I'm satisfied for now. But there's something I want to try tomorrow. Oh? What's that? Abhi asked. His tone suggested that he was almost afraid to know. Pragya leaned in and whispered her wish in his ear. But is that even possible? Abhi sputtered in shock, staring at her in a whole new level of amazement. I think you can do it. You're athletic enough, she answered drowsily, cuddling into him as her eyes slipped closed. But can you stretch that way? Abhi persisted. He was trying to visualize the steamy scenario she had described to him. He was intrigued, but also a little scared of her imagination. Sure, I do yoga. Pragya wrapped one arm around his chest and threw her leg over his hip. It was almost like snuggling with a teddy bear. A very warm, firm, hairy teddy bear. She felt her thoughts drift into nonsense as sleep came closer and closer. Abhi was still marveling over her suggestion for the next day. How did you even think of this? I read it in a book once. The heroine was very adventurous, she answered. Her voice was trailing off as she slid closer to dreamland. I think I might have to monitor your reading from now on, Jashmish. God knows what crazy ideas you'll get from these books. Abhi saw that Pragya had finally fallen asleep. Of course, she would never agree to him controlling her books if she was awake. He smiled at the sight of her cute, sleeping face. What a contrast to her maddeningly luscious body, which was now completely wrapped around his own. Abhi took a moment to thank whatever higher power there was in the universe, even Pragya's Bhagwan, for his incredible good fortune. Somehow, he had ended up with the perfect wife. She was a good and kind person who had made his family her own. She was smart, accomplished, and driven in her own right. She loved him more and understood him better than anyone he'd ever known before, and she made him want to be a better person every day that they spent together. And here, in the bedroom, in the most sacred place for couples, she was his perfect match. Except, maybe, she might have more appetite than him. He'd definitely have to stock up on protein shakes and energy drinks. He'd need them for tomorrow night, and all the long nights after that. He was sure he'd love every exhausting minute of it. The end.